Okay. Buonasera a tutti. Good evening, y'all. It is October 26th, 2024, and it's episode 45 of What's the Scoop? I hope y'all are doing well. Hope everybody's had a great week so far and is enjoying first and foremost, the beginning of the 2024 World Series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and our New York Yankees. For those who watch the same or for those who are similarly a fan of the Yankees, as I obviously am. And we got the game going on right now, and we just saw a filthy strikeout by Rodon of Shohei Ohtani. So, love seeing that. Got the live stream going on simultaneously, so I'll be checking in regularly with updates on game two between the Dodgers and the Yankees. It is currently the bottom of the third inning. It is a 1-1 tie at the moment with the Dodgers currently batting, so more coming on that as time goes on. But again, hope everybody's doing well. It's been another fascinating week in the sports landscape, whether that's within baseball as the World Series has kicked off. Uh, whether that's discussions of the NFL trade deadline kind of landscape kind of reaching its apex in the next week or two. Obviously, as we've discussed in the past, that's not so much kind of what we see with other leagues where things kind of crash at the very last couple of days. Things have kind of spread out a little bit for the NFL, and it's usually not as much of a mad rush that final day as we sometimes see in other sports. So, talking a little bit about that. Talking a little bit more about some of what's going on among other leagues. The NBA and NHL have kicked off their seasons as well, and of course, it's Saturday's college football. We had a couple of really significant games today. We had the Crimson Tide beating Missouri 34-0 in Alabama, so that was a solid beatdown for them, coming back off of what was a terrible, terrible performance against Tennessee, which always seems to play them pretty aggressively. So, plenty to get into today, and I'm looking forward to hearing what's on y'all's minds. So, as always, if there's something that you want to talk about, something you want to ask, something you just want to bring up that's not getting addressed on the show, please just drop it in that comment box and that chat. And looking forward to engaging with y'all throughout the rest of the afternoon and or evening, I guess I should say. Excuse me. But as of right now, I just again, so to kind of catch y'all up so far in terms of what's going on with game two, since that's what we've got right now, and I imagine that that's going to be what most people are looking and tuning in on. The game kicked off. It was the Rangers. I'm sorry, the Dodgers took first blood, which was a Tommy Edman home run in the bottom of the second off of Carlos Rodon. And then the Yankees matched it in the top of the third, the following half inning, with Juan Soto sending 1 yard as well. The other two base runners for the Yankees thus far have been walks, courtesy of Gleyber Torres and Anthony Rizzo. So, just to kind of catch everybody up as to how we got to this point thus far, as we sit here in the bottom of the third inning, now being 2 outs with a runner on first. And a couple hits already for Mookie Betts. Okay, it is now 3-1. Teoscar Hernandez just hit a home run to right field. Okay. All right, it's now 3-1. Dodgers have the lead. The bottom of the third is still 2 outs. Okay. As I was about to say, Mookie Betts already has 2 hits so far in this still early game, so he's continuing to have and again, I'll get into talking about Mookie for a second, because obviously the question that a lot of people were kicking around after yesterday's game, and validly so, and it's a question that I got from probably no fewer than 24 people, and it's an entirely valid one, which was yesterday when the game went to extra innings, and the Yankees, picked up the lead, and they were trying to shut it down against the Dodgers in that the bottom of that inning. What was the mentality behind going to Nestor Cortez there? And shouldn't they have gone to Tim Hill, who was rested, who had been pitching well in the postseason through his first few appearances? Lefty versus righty, all of that. So I know that there's going to be a lot of people who are going to probably have that same question, which was about, shouldn't they have gone to Hill over Cortez? Was it smart to walk Mookie or and face Freeman? What do you do with Ohtani coming up, et cetera, et cetera? And I don't think it's an unfair question at all to say, shouldn't they have gone with Hill or over Cortez and one thing or another. I don't think that's an unfair question. What I will say is, what I believe the logic to have been, whether they'll say it or not, but I believe the logic to have been was that because now what you've got the 3-batter minimum rule, right? So whoever you're bringing in and whoever's facing Freeman, who's been banged up, whoever's facing Freeman is up. And as I mentioned Freeman's name, he just hits a home run also. So it's now 4-1 Dodgers. Some of y'all can probably tell I'm trying to keep my composure for the sake of the show, but that's not what I want to see at all. Not good at all. Going back to what I was saying, as I again try to not just eviscerate this team while watching this game and doing the show. So going back to yesterday, my perception of the logic and the process there, you have to, whoever you're bringing in to face Freeman, who's been banged up, is also going to face Ohtani, who has been killing it the entire postseason at the plate. Obviously, you're not bringing in anybody who, completely is, is going to neutralize Ohtani. That being said, bringing in Cortez, bringing in somebody who, again, I know we have talked about, they've talked about ad nauseum how he hadn't been an active pitcher for several weeks, etc. So you bring him in, and now again, Cortez is not, this is not a secret to anybody. He's not a power pitcher. He's a finesse pitcher, and he's somebody who, again, his fastball tops out. I think actually the fastball he threw yesterday, which ended up being taken out by Freeman, which was 93 miles per hour. It just happened to be, a meatball right down Broadway. That was actually one of the harder fastballs he's thrown recently. So my perception of that was he has neutralized Ohtani better than Hill has. Against Cortez, Ohtani is 10 for 12. 10 out of 12 times he's gotten Ohtani out, is what I meant to say. It's the opposite. He's 2 for 12 against Ohtani. And, okay, we just got a double here. So now it's a runner on second. But again, going back to what I was saying. So in that process, my guess is that the idea was, getting through Freeman, then Ohtani, because again, whoever you face is Freeman with it, you have to face Ohtani. So my guess is that they didn't like the matchup for Hill, not just looking at that one batter of Freeman, but looking at the entire next couple of batters as well. They didn't like that matchup the way that they liked the matchup with Cortez. That seems to be what it came down to with me. Now, again, I know that you don't have any guarantee, obviously, that you're going to face him. And again, my bigger issue was Cortez's pitch selection in that situation. I don't know if that was Cortez. I don't know if it was well behind the plate. I don't know who it was. But the pitch selection of a fastball as the first pitch to Freeman, who is going to be sitting fastball, and you don't have an overpowering fastball in terms of stuff and velocity. I don't really quite know what the logic there was. So that was perhaps my bigger issue, was that. Again, completely fair to Monday morning quarterback the situation, and whether you should have brought in Cortez versus Hill. And I don't know if they made the right decision. Obviously now it doesn't look like they did. I'm not going to sit here and say they definitely made the right decision. I'm not going to do that. But what I'm also not going to do is okay, sorry. Just want to make sure that nothing crazy had happened, and no. But again, so I think that's kind of the trajectory of what led up to that. And again, obviously it didn't work out, and the coaching staff, Boone, etc., obviously took a lot of pitchforks for that. Again, understandably so, because again, there's no how do I want to phrase this? defending the process if the results don't come out when it comes to New York in the World Series. It's all about results. They don't care about the process. As somebody who cares about both, I'm not saying I definitely would have made the same move. I'm just saying that I don't think it was as terrible of a move as everyone wants to say. Obviously, looking back now, you look and you think, Tim Hill was quote unquote the obvious pick, which sure, if you want to believe that, or if you do believe that, I'm not going to sit here and say that, that's a completely wrong belief to have either. I'm just saying that if that was their mentality, was that they were focused on not just getting Freeman out, but thinking about what they'd have to do with Ohtani, and the inning is mercifully finally over. Kike Hernandez flies out to left field. Okay. So it is now currently, I think it was a 4-1 Dodger lead, I think. I'll have to double check when the score bug comes back out. But so again, that's where we're at right now. And again, I don't think that was, again, obviously it was a terrible way for the game to end. And again, no Yankees fan wanted to see that, and I completely understand the ire about the way that the game ended. But again, I think if you're going to Monday morning quarterback that, you also have to look at other things that happened as well. You have to look at the fact that the pitch selection for Cortez was questionable at best. You have to look at the fact that they were not in that situation if people like Judge are not turning into pumpkins suddenly at the plate. So again, agree with the fact that they're, again, it's justifiable to completely, go after that decision. But also you have to look into context, I think, the things that led up to that as well, and the reasons why that decision was made. So that's just my 2 cents on that. Again, not sitting here saying I completely hated or loved the decision that they did. I liked the Cortez move in and of itself. Whether or not I would have done that versus Hill, I can't honestly say no. Jody says, fire Aaron Boone. Hope you're doing well, Jody. Kenny says, Cortez had no business being in the game, period. Rushed back from elbow surgery. Hasn't pitched since September 18th and a starting pitcher. Boone is more worried about what color watch to wear. The one thing I will push back on there, I won't get into the whole Aaron Boone thing. The one thing I will push back on there is Brusdar Graterol, who pitched for LA, had also been laid off for a significant period of time, and he pitched just fine. So I'm not going to give Cortez again, he is literally my favorite player. I'm not going to give Cortez he wasn't playing, well enough, or I'm sorry, he wasn't playing, recently. So it's entirely, the onus is entirely off him and on Boone. I'm not going to do that because I just saw Brusdar Graterol, who also had been laid off for a significant period of time, pitch just fine. Again, I know it's two different situations, but if you're going to make it just off the basis of how long he had been laid off, I'm sorry, I'm not going to give Cortez a pass for that. Jess says, hey, Ryan. Oh, shucks. Hey, Ryan, facepalm for yesterday's game. Not sure what to say. I've got to send you a DM. Yep. Jess, great seeing you. Hope you and Kurt are doing well. Hope the family's good and you're feeling well. Obviously DM me anytime. I always love catching up with you. Kenny says, have a good show, Scoops. Can't take Cole out 88 pitches in. Stop the analytics in the World Series. Jeter said it best. I mean, I don't understand where the broad brush on analytics is coming into play there. I don't really follow, where you're, how those two things correlate to one another. Taking Cole out 88 pitches in, again, a fair thing to critique. Excuse me, sorry. In terms, again, I don't think they had not gotten enough length out of any of their starting pitchers. So I'm glad they got the length out of him that they did. Now, again, you just had 5 days off. So in theory, you should have your entire staff rested. So on one hand, in theory, yes, Cole should be able to go 88 pitches. Longer than 88 pitches. On the other hand, their bullpen, in my opinion, also in that situation should not have been unable to be relied upon to get a little bit extra oomph out of them. So I think you can play that both ways. And Stanton just grounded out. Kurt said it best, Dumb and Dumber managing in the World Series. Okay. I don't really know how to respond to that. Trevor says Swifty McDaniel. Oh God. Rodon is having an up and down postseason. Can't just have Cole being the only big money pitcher performing. Again, yeah, Trevor, I totally agree with you on that. What I just saw from Cole in the bottom of the last inning was unacceptable. I'm sorry, from Rodon in the bottom of the last inning was obviously unacceptable. Excuse me. And then I don't know what you caught of what I said previously, but again, people kind of going on that whole Monday morning quarterbacking of the decision last night, which, again, I get it, people who always want to come for Boone. Be my guest. There's plenty of fair criticism of Boone for that decision. That's totally fine. What I don't care for and what I don't like is the fact that people are letting players off the hook who are part of the reason why that situation. That was a really weird camera angle. Okay. Who are literally part of the reason why they're in that position in the first place. Aaron Judge, I love it. Aaron Judge is perhaps the greatest Yankee of my life in terms of offensive performance. And quite frankly, very good on defense as well. How he is such a pumpkin in the postseason is insane. And I'm sorry, people want to say, he shrinks in big moments. He shrinks it. You don't have a 62 home run season and then almost hit 60 home runs again 2 other times if you can't do it in big moments. It's not a big moment thing. Because if it were, you're not in New York hitting at almost 60 home runs or passing 60 home runs 3 separate times in your career before the age of 33. So that's not, in my opinion, I think that that's a bit of a. I don't want to say the word lazy, but I think that that's not. I think that's a pretty throwaway way of looking at it. And I was watching earlier. In fact, I'm going to give a shout out to a friend of mine, my friend Samantha, who I was talking to during the game just about an hour ago. And we were both watching. We're watching the same thing. You can literally predict the way that they're going to pitch Judge and the way that they're going to attack Judge. And, excuse me, it's the same pitches that were getting him out before 2022. It's the low breaking stuff toward the end of the at-bat, over the middle of the plate. It's the stuff that's going to just fall off the table right down the middle. And I just watched the same freaking pitch get Anthony Rizzo at 10 in the inning. So fine. If people want to pin yesterday solely on Boone, that's fine. It's not solely on Boone. Cortez made a terrible pitch selection, or the catcher, whoever it was, that was a terrible pitch selection. You're a finesse pitcher and not a power pitcher. So why you're throwing 93 down the pipe to Freddie Freeman to start an at bat in the 10th inning is beyond me. And then, again, you've got guys like Aaron Judge in that situation where, multiple times he's letting you down at the plate when you need him to come through. So all I'm saying is if you're going to go down a rabbit hole on one decision, you also got to look at what led up to that decision as well. Worried about pitch count is what Jeter referred to. Leiter pitched 144 pitches in World Series. That's the difference. And then Trevor says, this is on Cashman. If the Yankees can't get it done, look how many big money players are not performing. Again, excuse me. I don't know why I said again. So again, hey, wake up. I largely agree with you on that, except for I still don't think that I think that it does a disservice to the expansiveness of the situation if you're looking at it and only looking at, should I point the finger at Hal or Boone or Cashman? These players, these are 30, 35, 40, 20-something, year-old guys making 9 figures, very strong 8 figures per year. He should be able to know, if he's going into that situation, hey, I know who Freddie Freeman is. I know that I'm going up against a guy who's been banged up. I know I've been banged up. Maybe don't start off the at-bat throwing right down the middle a fastball that I know he's going to be sitting on in all likelihood, because I'm a starting pitcher coming off of an injury, going into this at-bat when I have to get 3 guys out in the bottom of a postseason inning. largely, more often than not, you're going to expect that that a guy's going to be sitting fastball in that situation because you're going to be expected to throw a fastball in that situation. So I don't know if maybe set up out the zone. I don't know exactly what the miscommunication was, or even if there was one, if there was a miscommunication, or if it was just a terrible game plan to begin with. But the game plan there expands far beyond Aaron Boone. I think if you want to say, oh, if they didn't have Aaron Boone there, they would have won that game. I think that you're wildly missing the boat there. I think. That being said, going back to Cashman, yeah, I think it's very fair critique that, again, like we've said plenty of times, Cashman is the one who put this roster together. Completely agree with that. However, this roster also got to the World Series. So, and my point in saying that is not to completely exonerate Cashman by any stretch. My point in saying that is, if these guys are good enough to get to the World Series, why are they not good enough when they get there? Like, what happens to these guys where they suddenly, again, these little things, suddenly are getting themselves beat? I said coming into this postseason, if they lose, they're not going to be. It's not going to be because another team was that much better than them. It's going to be because of the mistakes that they made, and that's exactly what happened yesterday. They made a terrible decision with the game plan, in terms of the way that they pitched to Freeman, or tried to pitch to Freeman, and then Aaron Judge is just going up there. Well, and it's not just Aaron Judge; he's just the most obvious one. Okay, good pitch for Rodon against Muncy, just there to get that one out. So now it's just a score update, still 4-1, bottom of the fourth, one out, and the Dodgers are actually. It looks like, all right, we got a mound visit here now with Boone going to talk to Rodon. So more updates coming on that, but. Again, yeah. So that kind of I think sums everything up as to how I feel about yesterday. I don't think that if you're going into it depends on what they were more focused on. I think if you're more focused on let's just get as much of the best of Cole that we can, and then now again. The issue that I had, and why I will defend taking Cole out, that's one move that I will defend. 2 of the first 4 pitches I saw the guy throw, he was giving up hard contact. So he clearly didn't have his best stuff yesterday to begin with. And I watched it, and he didn't have his best stuff yesterday to begin with. And then he was giving up hard contact again in a couple of those last couple pitches that he threw in that sort of 80 to 88 sequence, of which a couple of which almost left the yard. In fact, I watched Ohtani, make contact on one that almost got a lot worse than it ultimately ended up being. So no, that is one area where I think that he did make the right move at that point, because when you're starting to see hard contact like that given up, again, if you want to make the comparison to Al Leiter or whatever, the fact of the matter is, I always get told, you got to manage with your eyes. Well, my eyes were telling me that was the right move. So if you want to say, if you want to be, of the mindset where you're just going to bash analytics I won't say for no reason, but bash analytics because that's what you want to do, then fine. But even if I want to go with the so-called eye test, my eye test was telling me that he did not have his best stuff yesterday. And quite frankly, in a game that close, I ain't looking to screw around with a guy in the in the 90 to 100 pitch range when I know that third time through the order, you're going to have guys are going to have a better read on you than they did the first 2 times around. And he wasn't necessarily mowing guys down left and right the entire game to begin with. So I know I've kind of been playing both sides with a couple of these things. That is one area where I do think that pulling Cole was the right move. I do not honestly have an opinion on. I do not honestly have an opinion on whether Boone made a move that I would not have made, because in the moment, when I saw that Cortez was coming in, my reaction was, okay, I like this move. My brain's initial reaction didn't go to, why isn't Hill coming in? Because I was not thinking of it in the context of thinking against like what the alternatives were. I was thinking of, is this in itself a good move? Not is it better than this move or better than that move? I was thinking of, is this a good move? And I liked the move because of, what I knew about the the three batter effect, and what I knew about, just what I know about Cortez as a pitcher. Sorry, but again, that's it's done and over now, and a lot of how people will come to feel about it will largely, I think, going into tomorrow, I think largely will tie into how this game ends. Obviously, if they go down 0-2 here, then the ire is going to crank up even further going into tomorrow, because obviously tomorrow's an off day before Game 3 on Monday. And if this ends up being a tied series after today, then I think a lot of that will quiet down. Trevor says, bad contracts: DJ, Stroman, Rizzo, and Stanton. I know Stanton has had some bright spots. That's a little bit of an understatement. Stanton's literally been one of the best postseason performers in recent memory. Large picture-wise, he hasn't been good. Now, and I will push back on that, because this is something that, and I know Trevor's not a Yankee fan, so I don't want to lump him in there with the group that says this, but the amount of times I've seen Yankees fans the last couple of years say, we need more guys who do it in October. I don't care what you do in the regular season. I care what you do in October. And now we've got the best postseason performer we've had in multiple years, and perhaps the best one of this postseason, like for any team, perhaps. And now people are saying, and I don't mean now. I mean, I've heard this, throughout the past couple of years, and people are saying, you got to get rid of him. He's washed. Sorry. Okay, it didn't go out. We've got a runner on second. It's Will Smith, 1 out, bottom of the fourth, still 4-1 lead for LA. But I saw this happen with multiple players, where the fans will say, that they want guys like that, and then you got guys like Stanton who fit that profile, who turn it on to another level in October. And then people are saying, well, he doesn't do well enough in the regular season. I want to get rid of it. I don't know. That's a hard reconciliation from. And again, I know Trevor's not someone who watches the Yankees a ton, so I don't want to lump him in with that same group, because he's not. I know he's not approaching that from the same mentality. But no, I don't think that that saying that Stanton, is quote unquote washed, or they need to trade him or whatever. I don't think that's the answer at all. And quite honestly, they literally would not be in the World Series right now if it weren't for Stanton. I'm not saying solely Stanton, but he definitely has been arguably the MVP of the. I mean, he was the MVP of the ALCS. So, as for the others, Stroman. I mean, I wasn't a fan of the Stroman move to begin with, so you can go back and look at old episodes about that. DJ, another example of a guy who, he was batting title guy in the I think it was 2020 for us. He was an MVP front runner during earlier in his career with New York. Again, has not, that contract, the end of that contract has not aged well particularly. I know they went to a 60 year because they wanted to keep the money down, which, from that vantage point, because if they hadn't done that, then again, I don't know how the finances would have worked otherwise. But they did add that extra year so that they could keep some of the money down and make it more flexible payroll wise. And now we're kind of seeing some of the negative effects of that. But the Yankees' modus operandi has long been get it now and worry about later. And that's a prime example of that is what we saw just here with DJ LeMahieu. Anthony Rizzo, I don't think I don't think that's a fair contract to really blast. You cannot predict the fact that he was going to get a closed head injury when he came to New York and when he stuck around, which I'm sure was a big factor in some of his subsequent offensive struggles. He definitely has a significant role in that clubhouse as well. And for a period of time before he got hurt, he was their best bat outside of Judge before they got Soto. So I'm not going to agree with you on the Rizzo one. I do agree with you on Stroman. And again, like I said, the DJ thing is kind of one of those ones that worked out well in the beginning and then didn't at the end. But let's go back to I'll go back to the A-Rod. I mean, obviously, I'm not saying that that LeMahieu and A-Rod are anyway comparable players, but just looking at their contracts and sort of that landscape, you can't fairly judge the A-Rod contract on the last 2 years of it. I don't think you can fairly judge the DJ contract on the last 2 years of it. A couple of years ago when you were getting when you were spending $15 million a year for batting champion production and MVP front runner or top rank front runner production for that role. I think fans were taking it left and right. So giveth and taketh away. Draft and develop. That's the best way to have long-term success. Look at how the Astros have built their team. I mean, if you look back at some of the earlier shows that I've done, I mean, even back when I was on the main show, back in 2023, I want to say it was that I was talking about this. But one of my biggest criticisms of the Yankees has been that because people want to fixate on either Hal or Boone or Cashman, it's averting eyes from people who I think have really struggled with their, in their positions, which is guys like Damon Oppenheimer, who's the amateur scouting department head. He's been better the last couple of years, but for an extended period of time, all he had to show for about a decade's worth of work was Gardner and Aaron Judge. And then the last couple of years, things started to improve. They've pulled up. They pulled Volpe. They pulled Wells. They pulled. I know I'm forgetting people, but it's gotten better over the last couple of years, which has been long overdue positive. But again, I do agree with you with the fact that they did not draft well for far too long, and that hurt them for an extended period of time. And that's part of why you saw. And then they got into this weird mishmash where it was they were getting prospects, but they weren't playing those guys because of the free agents and trades that they had made. But then they weren't trading those guys away when they weren't playing them. And again, I've talked about guys like Oswald Peraza. I've talked about guys like in the past, some of the names are not coming to me right now, but some of the names are not coming to me right now, but it was an issue for far too long where they were drafting guys or trading for guys or signing guys internationally. And why did that just happen? Hang on, glitch alert here. Hang on. There we go. My bad. This Kenny says, first to admit that I was not a Stanton fan, but he's proved me wrong this postseason. Oh, prove me wrong this postseason, sorry. I want to know when we're going to admit Boone is not a great manager. I mean, I never said it. I shouldn't say I never said. If you want me to say he's not a top 5 manager, then fine. I said, last week I thought he's not a top 5 manager. But again, I saw some of the comments that you were making when you were saying that he was the worst manager the Yankees have ever had, which is just objectively not true. And so if you want me to come down in a gray area on Boone, that's again, I think he probably put him somewhere around maybe top 10. I think would be a fair place to say. If you're not going to convince me that this is a guy who, again, we're looking at somebody right now who, regardless of how he finishes this season or this postseason, this is somebody who's been in the postseason. I think it's 6 of his first 7 years, or 7 of his first 8 years. He's been in multiple ALCS. This is not something that a terrible manager would do. And getting through some of the injuries that he had, and getting through some of the not injuries that he had, obviously, but injuries to the roster. Like, if you want to criticize Boone for yesterday, then fine. But that means he also has to get credit for when he does things well, and that's not what fans want to do. Fans want to credit the players when the players do well, and they want to trash Boone when things go wrong. And that's what all I'm saying is that's not how I'm going to approach things. I'm saying that I'm going to look at it from both perspectives because he's not been, excuse me, because again, I'm not going to always say that when it's good, it's the players, and when it's bad, it's the manager, or the other way around. I'm not going to always say when it's good, it's the manager, and when it's bad, it's the players. Like, I think that broad brushing it doesn't really actually help get to the actuality of the situation. He has never done anything at all with the best roster every single year. Excuse me, and I know we've had this. I know I've had this. I've stated these before, but 2022, I was there in AL. Excuse me, I was there in the ALCS when we got swept, and the Bader, LeMahieu, I'm trying to remember who else. I think it was Benintendi. I think it was another one. Those guys all getting hurt in the going into the ALCS. I don't know what Boone was supposed to do about that. Two of their biggest guys going cold in the ALCS. I don't know what Boone was supposed to do about that. So that's the argument that I was making, which is, excuse me, and again, like I've said in the past, because I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, but because I had asked the question repeatedly, okay, if you want to get out Aaron Boone, who are you bringing in? And I gave my answer a week or two ago. I don't know if you saw that episode, but excuse me. But yeah, going back to your original question of I want to know when we're going to admit Boone's not a great manager. I've said specifically yesterday. I said that that's a completely fair criticism to make of him in terms of yesterday's game or whatever. I just said don't lose sight of everything else that happened going into that decision as well. I think that rarely in baseball, and I'm going to take out Aaron Boone. I'm going to take the specifics of everybody for a second. I'm going to take those out. Right now we got one hit halfway through the game, which is not what I want to see. But if we're going to, looking at it from, again, it doesn't have to be the Yankees. It can be any team. No move in a baseball game operates or happens or occurs in a vacuum. So what I'm trying to do, and it's not just this episode, what I typically try to do, whether it's whatever team I'm talking about, is the situation that they were in, what led up to that. Because, yes, it is 100% fair to say you would have put in Hill over Cortez, which is totally fine. What I'm saying, the argument that I was making, I wouldn't even call it an argument. The mindset I was coming from earlier was simply that you can't have a fair discussion about that situation in that scenario without acknowledging also the things that led up to it. And the point that I was making was that he, meaning Boone, in that case, was not operating in a vacuum in that situation, and that the other factors that led up to that situation came into play. That's all I was saying. I'm not trying to in any way shift blame to or from any player or Boone or whatever, because they all were reasons why we lost yesterday. All of them. Boone, Judge, Cortez, all of them. That's the only thing that I was trying to say, was that I just wanted to contextualize the fact that all these different things came together. Cortez. Trevor says, Stan has been too hot and cold for me. Scoop Soto has been a big reason for the team's success. Not just talking about this postseason. Those big money contracts could cost you a young star like Soto eventually. Just a concern for me if I'm the Yankees moving forward. Excuse me. Again, totally fair critique. In fact, I think it was a year or two ago. I remember I did an episode where I was talking about how it wasn't even the top tier of the contracts that the Yankees had that was really screwing them. It was sort of that second tier, sort of that middle class. It was I'm trying to remember who the other guy that I was talking about was, because I know I was talking about DJ. I was talking about Hicks. I want to say maybe Severino was the other one. I'm blanking right now. I think it was those three, which is, again, it's great to hit on your big contracts. And it's great to have, those sort of, guys that are making, six figures, and those guys that are making the low $1-2 million. But if you're paying a good chunk of your middle of your roster and they're all either struggling or regressed or hurt, you're going to struggle. Like that's what I was getting messages a little while ago about like, this is what, this is why the Astros or the Dodgers, whatever, like what separates them. This is a big part of what separates them is that they get those big guys, but the supplementation of those guys, the guy, the Max Muncy's of the world, the Teoscar Hernandez's of the world, the if you want to go back a couple years, they had God, what the hell is that guy's name? They had that utility player whose name I can't remember. I think he played like second base or something. It's not Hernandez. I'm trying to remember who it was. But okay, that's a fly out. Never mind. Oh, nice play by Verdugo, by the way. Verdugo's been such a fascinating player to watch because he will make me want to claw my eyes out, and then he'll make 3 plays in the field where I was just like, don't see that every day. Although I really didn't need to see the rerun of that Teoscar Hernandez homer a third time. But yeah, that's where we're at right now. But Trevor, to get back to you, I'm going to pull up the Yankees payroll thing real quick because I when I rattle these off, I don't want to kind of be misspeaking my information here. So looking toward next year, they're 4th in current allocations in terms of total cap. They got just over $200 million allocated for next year. So those top guys, I mean, we know who the top guys are: Judge, Cole, Stanton, Rodon. But that next tier is Stroman, Rizzo. Although that's a club option for $17 million, and I expect that club options are going to be declined. I think they're going to try and keep him for a lower value, but I don't know if they'll be able to make that work. Meaning, I don't know if they'll be able to come to an agreement. And then DJ is at 15. So yeah, that starts to be where we come into that level of concern again. Is Stroman, LeMahieu, Rodon, that right there, and that's 3 guys who you're not 100% sure what you're going to get out of next year, and it's about $61 million, if I did that mental math correctly. That's about $61 million in payroll just there. So that's about a 30-year payroll going to 3 players, and I'm not 100% sure what I'm getting out of that. And that's the challenge that you run when you go for these contracts that are, especially in LeMahieu's case, where you're getting, what you're getting up front, and you're just like, we'll figure it out down the road. Because this is not like the NFL where you can restructure things. You can either kick the can down the road, or not everything's guaranteed, or one thing or another. And another hit for Hernandez. Good God. And for those who didn't know, Jake Cousins came in relief. He's about 21 pitches in right now. Yeah, so that kind of would be I wouldn't say my concern, but what I'm keeping my eye on going into this offseason is not just the $108 million that's being contributed or allocated to Judge, Cole, and Stanton, but those next 4 guys, or my belief, next 3 guys, because again, I don't think that New York's keeping Rizzo at $17 million. It's what I want to see is what I think that they need to be paying attention to as well. And then beyond that is some of those guys that they have that are going to be in their 3rd or 4th years of arbitration. In some cases it's 4th years of arbitration. I want to see what they're looking to do with those guys. Like, are they going to look to extend to any of them? Are they going to trade any of them? Things like that. And guys who are going to be in their 3rd year arbitration, that includes guys like Cortez, Trent Grisham, Jose Trevino, who he might be the most interesting case to me because he was, we all know how great he was for a long period of time, especially at the plate, especially on defense, but even at the plate. And now he's pretty much been taken over by Austin Wells. So I don't know what's going to happen there. I would expect that they're going to look to trade Trevino this offseason. Then we got guys like JT Brubaker, who's really been a non-factor. And then John Berti, who's hurt right now. Tim Meza, who has been, a guy. He's not really been anything fantastic, but he's not been terrible either. So I think that also is going to have a major factor on that, Trevor, as far as next year is concerned, is not only the guys who are in that sort of middle class in terms of what they've already been locked into payroll-wise, but some of those guys that we don't know what they're going to get. Because the guys that I mentioned just there, if I can quickly add this up in my head, their projections are at about 19. Yeah, so those projections tie in about 25, 26 million projection for those players that I mentioned for arbitration purposes. So, and then you add that already to what I was already saying. So you're looking at not half your payroll, but a pretty close to half your payroll going to those players. Um, so, and I've had discussions with people who, and I don't entirely agree with this 100%. I don't entirely disagree with it either, but I'm just saying I don't 100% buy into it fully. Um, who have told me that they would look to potentially see what you can get for either Rodon or Cole or both on the trade market this offseason. Um, again, I think that's a really hard discussion to have because again, you don't know when you deal with players with those types of contracts. Obviously, their age, Rodon, his injuries is going to come up, as is his sort of up and down effectiveness. In his case, obviously it's less money than it is for Cole, but in his case, you have that discussion of how much money are you willing to eat to keep your return up, or are you willing to take less of a return to give up some of that, or to move some of that money off the books? And I think Cole is going to be a little bit less of that, having to make that determination. Excuse me, because I think there are a lot of teams that would pay most of the 36 million for Garrett Cole, and just kind of assume the risk of whether or not he would be able to maintain what he's been as he continues to age 34, 35, 36. So that's going to be, this entire roster, even though they've got, like I said, the fourth most payroll commitment for next year already, there are, I think, a lot of questions that are going to have to be answered. A lot of it is going to be financial related. And I mean, obviously, the biggest one that hangs over the entire offseason is what happens with Juan Soto, obviously. But it goes far beyond that. And I think that gets understated. When is it time for a new philosophy from a team building aspect? Just seems like a fresh face in the GM role could be worth looking at. Again, I have no problem with that, but it's like I said earlier about Aaron Boone. Who is that person that we're going to be talking about, or who's that person that we're looking at? Because I'm willing to bet most people, if that's what they're looking for, they're not looking to just promote somebody who's been a top lieutenant for the current front office. So I'm guessing that rules out guys like Jim Hendry, like Mike Fishman, like Gene Afterman. If they could, and I don't know if they would, but if they could get her back, I would love to see if Kim Eng would be a possibility, because I loved what she did in Miami. And I thought that she's, even before that, I thought that she had built up quite a very impressive resume in LA and other places. And finally, the fifth inning's over. But, again, I don't think it's ever a bad time if you're not winning the championship, which is the only thing that matters. It's never a bad time to sort of self-evaluate. I think you should always be self-evaluating. Are we in the best position we could be in terms of the way we're doing things in our process? And if you don't think you are, then you should always be, entertaining, making phone calls, either to bring in perspectives or to, bring in new people or move out old people, whatever you want to say. But that's kind of where I get hung up is saying, like, it's great to say, oh, we want to make a change here. Okay, but what's the change? Just telling me I want to fire Cashman, or I want Hal to sell the team, or I want Boone to, I can go on X and see that said 500 times. I don't know what, I don't know where's the other end of that. What's the second half of that? So that's kind of where I would want to look is, and because I'm a huge fan of Brian Sabian, who's up there right now as an assistant. So he's somebody that I would love to look at. But again, he's been with the Yankees for much of the last 30 years, with the exception of the time he was running the San Francisco front office and led them to 3 championships there. So I don't know if that's somebody that people would love to look at, because he's kind of that weird balance of he's got a winning history, but he's also tied in tightly with the regime that people want to move off from so badly. So, how do you reconcile that? This camera keeps tipping back. How do you that's my question would be, how do you reconcile that? And what do you do about that? And do you automatically rule out everybody with any sort of connection to that current regime? Which, again, not an unfair thing to say that they would, but again, just in terms of what sort of specific discussion are we having is my point. Because I really don't think that if you believe that, like, let's say that New York doesn't win this World Series. If you go into this offseason and let's say that they clean house. Let's say that Cashman's out. Let's say that Boone's out. Let's say that they do what I said that they should do and bring in David Ross as manager going forward. Excuse me. Now my question moving forward off of that would be, so obviously who comes in as the quote unquote main guy in that position. Do they go down the same or similar road and try and bring over someone from Chicago, which is, obviously where David Ross was just managing? Do they kind of tie in the connection of both, like, their current front office, but also, that regime over in Chicago? And because if so, then, excuse me, they've got somebody right in there who was the former general manager of Chicago and is now a special assistant to the current regime, which is Jim Henry. I mentioned him before. He also ties in as somebody who was he got his initial promotion off of Andy McPhail, who's got those connections as well. So, it kind of all, it's all very fascinating just in terms of this whole inner working network of personnel within MLB, where a lot of these people just, have the same connections, and it's kind of just a whole bunch of retread in a lot of different ways. But I would not be looking at, we got Soto chirping in an umpire right now. Please don't get yourself ejected. Oh, God. Oh, never mind. I think he's just looking for clarification. Okay. Anyway, but I would just be, again, if you're not going into this offseason planning to be in full rebuild mode, which I don't think you should plan to be in full rebuild mode this offseason unless the series goes absolutely terrible and you get a strong sense that you're not keeping Soto. If that's the case, then fine. But unless you're going that route, I really don't love the idea of replacing Boone and Cashman with first-timers. I just don't think that's a great move. I don't think a team that is in its contending window but may not be for that much longer, I don't think that that's something you want to supplement with guys who have never done the GM or the managerial role. And again, everybody who's become a great manager was a first-time manager at some point. But just my gut reaction is I don't know that bringing in a first-time manager to be replacing who was already a first-time manager in Aaron Boone, and who I think in a lot of cases does not get the fair evaluation that he deserves from most of the fan base. I'll say I think that the non-fan base evaluates him much closer to how I evaluate him. I don't think that Yankee fans sometimes I definitely is one of the areas where I kind of disagree from what I would say the median Yankee perspective is, or fan perspective is. But that would be a struggle for me, would be replacing a first timer with another first timer. Now, as an executive, different story. And Judge just goes down again on the same pitch that I just said a little while ago that they keep getting him out on, which is low breaking stuff. Madre de Dios. Okay. Muted this by accident. There will be names to explore just when and if they will want to make a change. I would look at organizations that have success building up their farm systems. I don't think that's. I don't want to phrase this. I think that's a good place to start. Is probably the best way that I would say that. Now, the organization that I would probably target, as nobody's going to be surprised to hear me say, but the organization that I would probably target first and foremost, I'd be looking at Atlanta. I think Atlanta is run fantastically. I would probably look at some of the guys in their front office. I would look at perhaps Jason Pare, who is their research and development guy. I might look at Ben Sestanovich, who is their player development sort of head person. I think that down throughout the their sort of baseball development and analytics space, they've got that woman Christina Zachardi there, who I think is worth talking to. So I think that there's a place like Atlanta. I think would be a good place to start with some of their baseball people. If you want to look at first time guys, because again, I just don't see any way that Alex Anthopoulos is leaving to come over to New York. And I think that a good number of people who are over there are probably looking for promotions within. They tend to like to keep their own people. They don't tend to be outsourcing a ton from other organizations, nor do they tend to usually let their guys go to other places as well. We saw that happen a couple of years ago when people thought they were going to be letting go of Brian Snitker, and they ended up not, and it ended up working out well for them. So that's kind of what excuse me. Kenny says what? Oh, sorry. Kenny says Yankees may get swept if Judge doesn't start hitting. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. And well, I mean, I know what's going on. I just saw it go on because I just saw the same thing happen 5 different times. Why? Like, how is it that this guy can hit anything thrown to him, even if it's on the outside of, even if it's outside the zone, pretty reliably for the last 3 seasons? And now I don't know what happens. His swing just goes back to 2016 as soon as I don't know. I don't know if he's feeling like he has to do more, so he's overcompensating and trying to, or because I mean we all have seen how terribly he gets balls and strikes called on him sometimes because of the size of his zone. So I don't know if it's he thinks, oh, they're going to call that on me, so I got to swing at it, and then his swing mechanics just fall apart. There's 5 different things that I can think of that could be going on, and none of them are particularly good. For those who aren't watching, Tim Hill just came in relief of Jake Collins. But yeah, it's just exasperating. It's really the only way I can say it. I look at number 54, and I know it's Tim Hill now, but I look at number 54, and I still get war flashbacks to Aroldis Chapman throwing perhaps the 3 worst pitches that have ever been thrown in my time as a Yankees fan. And Kenny says, what I mean by hitting is put ball in play, for goodness sakes. And yeah, I mean, that's always a good place to start. And for some reason, Judge seems to be struggling with that. The problem that's going to come with that is that if Judge doesn't get right, it's going to start having the domino effect, because if Judge isn't right, then that sort of tandem, or whatever you want to say, that sort of 1-2 or 2-3 with Judge and Soto, you're not going to have to pitch them or attack them the same way that you would if both are on. So that's going to not only neutralize Judge's effect, but it's going to neutralize Soto's effect as well. And if you're neutralizing Soto's effect, again, like I said, it's a domino reaction that starts to it sounds a little bit of an over exaggeration at times to say that as Judge goes, the whole lineup goes. But because of the fact that Judge and Soto, I think, are so interlinked, and I'm in no way. Let me make that very, very, very I lost my train of thought. I'm not in any way making a case that Soto isn't a legend on his own right without Judge. Let me make it clear that's not what I was saying. But in saying that, they make each other better players. They are better versions of each other playing together is what I mean. And so as a result of that, I think that it's a slow downward spiral between from not having Judge being at his best to that meaning that they don't, have to, handle Soto the same way. And then, again, obviously it starts to build out from there. Especially if you're, keeping that sort of 2 and 3 spot, trying to keep those guys in that same pairing because, again, that's where I think most people want them, including myself. And that being said, we just ticked past the 1 hour mark. Guys, I can't thank y'all enough. There was a lot of activity tonight. There was a lot of really hard-hitting questions and a lot of good dialogue. I always really appreciate that. Trevor, Kenny, I know Jody was on here. Excuse me. Had a couple of other people chiming in. I know not Jen, I'm sorry. Jess was on earlier. Guys, I know there were plenty of other people who were on just, viewing tonight as well. So I can't thank y'all enough. This was a fantastic episode. Obviously, I wish that I could have had a little bit more positive live reaction to some of the game, but hopefully once we go off the air, hopefully some of that will transpire later on over the next 3 innings. But as of right now, this is where we're at, and hopefully the rest of the World Series, again, hopefully everybody enjoys the rest of these games. Hope everybody has a great time watching football tomorrow. And as always, next Saturday, look on Saturday, November 2nd for, excuse me, for episode 46. Shout out Andy Pettit. Episode number 46 of What's the Scoop? Same scoop time, same scoop channel.